My interactions with you have been positive as well. I never thought anything negative.
At 54, Corey Feldman is finally saying what many have suspected for years. For decades, whispers surrounded some of the biggest names in the industry, but now Feldman is speaking clearly, and he's naming names. What does this mean for Charlie Sheen? And why is this moment different from everything we've heard before? Join us as we unpack the shocking revelations about one of Hollywood's darkest chapters, Rise of the Two Corys. In the 1980s, two young actors became household names almost overnight, Corey Feldman and Haim. They were both talented, charming, and full of energy. Audiences across the country fell in love with their faces, their personalities, and the friendship they shared both on screen and off. This bond, and their success, earned them the nickname, the Two Corys. Their paths crossed in The Lost Boys, a cult classic about teenage vampires. The chemistry between Feldman and Haim was instant. Fans loved their dynamic, and producers took notice. Soon after, the pair was cast together in a series of teen comedies like License to Drive and Dream a Little Dream. These films may not have always won over critics, but they were hugely popular with young audiences. The Two Corys became a brand of their own, with posters on bedroom walls and appearances in teen magazines. They were seen as fun-loving, cool, and carefree, everything young people wanted to be. Off-screen, their friendship seemed just as strong. They appeared in interviews and magazine shoots together. Fans believed they were best friends in real life, and for a time, they were. But what the public didn't see was the pressure they were both under. Behind the scenes, life for these two rising stars was far more complicated and painful than it seemed. The bright lights of fame were hiding a much darker reality. Both Feldman and Haim were young boys in an adult world. They were working long hours, dealing with high expectations, and surrounded by people who didn't always have their best interests at heart. Their friendship, while real, became a lifeline in an industry that often treated them like products instead of people. In the 1980s, Hollywood was booming with youth-driven content. Studios were producing films and TV shows starring young actors, and the demand for teen stars was high. But while these young actors were making headlines and millions of dollars for the industry, the systems meant to protect them were deeply flawed or didn't exist at all. Many child actors, including Feldman and Haim, were left to navigate fame without enough support. Parents, managers, and agents often focused on success and income rather than the emotional well-being of the children involved. Sets were not always safe places. In fact, they could be dangerous. Child actors were often exposed to adult behavior at a young age. Drugs, alcohol, and inappropriate conversations were not uncommon. There were few rules about what was allowed around minors, and even fewer people enforcing them. The party culture of Hollywood in the 1980s made matters worse. Many young stars were introduced to substance use early on, sometimes even encouraged by the adults around them. Parties were frequent and often unsupervised. Feldman has said in multiple interviews that it was normal for young actors to be invited to adult parties where boundaries were crossed. These environments placed kids in harm's way, leaving them vulnerable to people who wanted to take advantage of them. One of the biggest problems was the presence of predatory individuals, powerful people in the industry who used their status to exploit children. These abusers often worked behind the scenes as managers, casting directors, or producers. They had access to child actors and used that access in terrible ways. Because they had power and influence, they were rarely challenged. Victims were afraid to speak out, fearing they wouldn't be believed or that they would lose work. Both Feldman and Haim have spoken out about the abuse they suffered during their years in the spotlight. Feldman in particular has dedicated much of his adult life to raising awareness about child abuse in Hollywood. He has explained how he and Haim were both victims of pedophiles in the industry, and that their early fame came with a price. Haim struggled deeply with the trauma he endured. Over time, he turned to drugs as a way to cope. His career began to fade as addiction took hold, and despite several attempts to get clean, he continued to battle his demons until his untimely death in 2010. Feldman, though more outspoken, also faced similar struggles with addiction and emotional pain. He has described how he felt betrayed and silenced, even as he tried to call attention to what happened to him and his best friend. The story of the Two Corys is not just about fame and friendship. It is also about what happens when children are placed in an adult world with no safeguards. Their experiences show the darker side of Hollywood, the side where money and fame come before the safety and innocence of young performers. Many of the problems that existed in the 1980s are still being discussed today. The entertainment industry has begun to take more steps to protect minors, but stories like those of Feldman and Haim continue to be reminders of how much was ignored for so long. The trauma they experienced didn't just shape their careers, it shaped their entire lives. Hollywood royalty origins. Charlie Sheen was born Carlos Erwin Estevez on September 3, 1965 in New York City. From the beginning, he was surrounded by the world of movies and television. His father, Martin Sheen, was already a respected actor when Charlie was a child. Martin Sheen had starred in several famous films, including Apocalypse Now and, later, The West Wing. Charlie's mother, Janet Templeton, was an artist, and their household was full of creative energy. Charlie wasn't the only one in his family who followed the path of acting. His older brother, Emilio Estevez, also became a successful actor and filmmaker, known for roles in The Breakfast Club, St. Elmo's Fire, and The Mighty Ducks. Growing up in this family meant that Charlie had a front-row seat to the inner workings of Hollywood. He watched scripts get written, actors rehearse lines, and film crews come and go. By the time he was a teenager, he had already learned a lot about how the industry worked. The family eventually settled in Malibu, California, where Charlie attended Santa Monica High School. While he showed interest in school sports like baseball, academics were not his strong suit. His passion for acting grew stronger during high school, and he began making short films with his friends, some of whom would go on to become famous themselves, like Rob Lowe and Sean Penn. Together, they experimented with storytelling, filming, and editing, building the foundation for what would soon become Charlie's professional career. But Charlie's time in high school was cut short. He was expelled from Santa Monica High School just a few weeks before graduation due to poor attendance and bad grades. Still, by that time, Charlie had already made up his mind. He was going to be an actor, no matter what. With a famous last name and plenty of ambition, he started auditioning and taking small roles, using the stage name Charlie Sheen to match his father's. His first on-screen appearance came in 1974 when he played a small role in The Execution of Private Slovic, a film starring his father. It was a quiet introduction to the business, but it wouldn't be long before he made a bigger name for himself. Charlie Sheen's real acting career began in the early 1980s, and he didn't waste any time making a mark. His first major film was Red Dawn, a Cold War action movie about a group of American teenagers fighting against an invading foreign army. It wasn't a huge hit with critics, but it was popular with audiences and gave Sheen his first taste of Hollywood attention. He played a serious, determined young fighter, an image that would stick with him in the years to come. Charlie Sheen became one of the most recognizable faces in Hollywood. His roles were intense and dramatic, and he had a natural screen presence that made him stand out. People were drawn to his charisma, his confidence, and his rebellious edge. He wasn't just playing tough or wild characters, he seemed to live that way off-screen as well. As Sheen's fame grew, so did his circle of friends and acquaintances. In the late 1980s, he began crossing paths with other young stars of the time, especially Corey Feldman and Haim. These three actors were all part of a rising group of young talent in Hollywood. They were known for being good-looking, charming, and successful, and they often attended the same parties and industry events. They were part of a culture where young stars were constantly being pushed into the spotlight and surrounded by temptation. Next up, we dig into what really happened on the set of Lucas and the disturbing accusations that would come years later. The allegations surface. In 1986, the film Lucas was released, introducing audiences to a touching story about growing up and feeling out of place. The film centered around a 14-year-old boy named Lucas, played by Haim, who falls in love with an older girl while struggling to fit in with high school life. It was a coming-of-age drama that many people admired for its emotional depth and strong performances. Haim was just 13 years old during the filming of Lucas. He was still very new to Hollywood, though his talent was clear even at that age. He played Lucas with vulnerability, innocence, and charm, and many believed it would be the start of a bright career. At the time, Charlie Sheen was in his early 20s. He played Cappy, a kind-hearted football player who protects Lucas from bullies and becomes one of the few people to treat him with respect. The film helped both actors gain more attention in the industry. On set, the two actors spent a lot of time together. They worked closely on scenes and shared quiet moments between takes. Since Haim was still a minor, he should have had constant adult supervision, especially considering the nature of the industry at the time. However, in the 1980s, protections for child actors were not nearly as strong as they are today. Supervision on sets was often minimal, especially once filming was underway. Children, even very young ones, could find themselves in situations where they were left alone with adults or older cast members for extended periods. Years after Lucas was released, troubling allegations began to surface about what may have happened during the filming of the movie. These rumors first spread quietly in private conversations among those close to Haim and Corey Feldman, but they would eventually become part of a larger public discussion. The first major hint of something serious came from Corey Feldman, Haim's longtime friend and co-star. Feldman has openly spoken for many years about the abuse that he and Haim suffered as young actors in Hollywood. In multiple interviews and his 2013 memoir, Choreography, Feldman explained that both of them were victims of abuse by older men in the industry. While he did not name names right away, he strongly hinted that Haim had experienced something deeply traumatic with a well-known actor. Later, Feldman became more direct. In interviews and public appearances, he said that Haim had confided in him during their teenage years about being assaulted during the filming of Lucas. Feldman claimed that Haim told him Charlie Sheen was the person who assaulted him. According to Feldman, Haim described a encounter that happened between takes on set in a private and unsupervised location. The allegations became widely known in 2017 when the National Enquirer published a story quoting a close friend of Haim who repeated the same accusation, that Sheen had assaulted Haim on the set of Lucas when Haim was only 13. The accusation was horrifying and it shocked the public. Many were disturbed by the idea that such an act could have occurred on a movie set, especially involving two well-known actors. In 2020, Corey Feldman released his documentary where he directly named Sheen as Haim's alleged abuser. Feldman said he felt it was important to speak the truth on behalf of his late friend, who passed away in 2010 at the age of 38. Feldman's goal was to expose the widespread abuse of young actors in Hollywood and to bring attention to a system that had protected powerful predators for decades. Charlie Sheen has strongly denied all allegations. He has said that the claims are completely false and that he never had any inappropriate relationship with Haim on or off the set of Lucas. When the accusations were first published, Sheen's spokesperson released a statement saying that Sheen categorically denies the incident ever occurred. Sheen himself has called the accusations sick, twisted, and outlandish. Public response to the allegations has been deeply divided. Some people believe Feldman and support his efforts to speak up for victims. They argue that Hollywood has a long history of protecting abusers and that victims often stay silent out of fear or shame. Others have questioned Feldman's motives or asked why these stories are only now being made public. There are also those who point to the absence of physical proof or legal action as reasons to doubt the claims. Next, we'll look at how the public reacted to Feldman's decision to go public and the firestorm that followed. Corey Feldman speaks out. In 2013, Corey Feldman released his memoir, Choreography. The book offered readers a deeply personal and emotional look into his life as a child actor in Hollywood. It wasn't just about his time in movies or his friendship with Haim. It also pulled back the curtain on the darker side of the entertainment industry. For the first time, Feldman openly talked about the he and other young actors experienced in the 1980s. He described a hidden culture where predators had easy access to children. According to Feldman, powerful men in Hollywood used their positions to take advantage of young boys who were too afraid, too confused, or too ashamed to speak out. In Choreography, Feldman did not directly name Charlie Sheen. However, he told a disturbing story about a specific person, a major star, who allegedly abused Haim when Haim was just 13 years old during the filming of Lucas. Feldman wrote that this actor was significantly older, already well-known, and used his influence to take advantage of Haim while the two were working together. Although Sheen's name wasn't mentioned, the hints were strong enough that many readers made the connection. Fans and the media began piecing things together. The timing, the film, and the descriptions in the book all pointed toward Sheen, though Feldman still avoided naming him directly at that time. He said his main goal was not to shame individuals, but to raise awareness about the widespread abuse that had gone unspoken for far too long. The memoir sparked serious discussions. It also drew backlash. Some people doubted Feldman's claims, saying he should have come forward earlier or with more proof. Others supported him, praising his bravery and honesty for starting a conversation many found uncomfortable but necessary. While Feldman was beginning to open up publicly, Corey Haim had been fighting a different battle behind the scenes. After his breakout roles in the 1980s in The Lost Boys, License to Drive, Lucas, and others, Haim quickly became one of Hollywood's most beloved teen stars. But fame came with a heavy cost. According to Feldman and others close to him, Haim struggled with deep emotional wounds stemming from his experiences as a child actor. He felt used, confused, and abandoned by people in the industry who should have protected him. He also dealt with feelings of shame and isolation, which were made worse by the pressure to keep quiet about what he had been through. To cope, Haim turned to drugs. He began using at a young age, and over the years, his addiction grew worse. His career began to suffer in the 1990s as roles became harder to find. He tried many times to get clean and even appeared on reality shows like the Two Corys with Feldman, where their complicated friendship and painful pasts were put on display. Behind the scenes, Haim was trying to reclaim his life, but it was a constant uphill battle. According to Feldman, Haim had expressed a desire to tell his own story and name the person he said had assaulted him. But each time he tried to speak out, he was met with resistance from industry figures, handlers, or even friends who were afraid of the consequences. Feldman said Haim was pressured into silence, either by fear or by people who didn't want the truth to come out. On March 10, 2010, Corey Haim died at the age of 38. The official cause was pneumonia, complicated by an enlarged heart and fluid in his lungs. While there were no illegal drugs found in his system at the time of his death, it was clear that years of addiction had taken a major toll on his body. Many believe that the emotional trauma he endured as a child actor played a large role in his long decline. Feldman has since described Haim's death as not just a medical tragedy, but the result of a lifetime of pain and secrets. For Feldman, it became even more important to tell the truth, not just for himself, but for the friend he had lost. In 2020, Corey Feldman released a self-financed documentary. This was the moment Feldman finally named names. In the film, he explicitly stated that Charlie Sheen was the man Corey Haim had accused of raping him on the set of Lucas in 1986. The film was screened during a one-time online event, and Feldman described it as his way of honoring Haim and revealing what he called Hollywood's deepest secrets. In the documentary, Feldman not only repeated what Haim had allegedly told him years earlier, but he also described a system that protected powerful predators while punishing victims who spoke out. The release of the documentary caused a major media storm. News outlets covered the story widely and opinions quickly split. Many viewers expressed support for Feldman, saying it was time for Hollywood to be held accountable. Some praised his courage for going against powerful people and risking legal trouble to speak the truth. Others were more skeptical. Critics questioned Feldman's motives, pointing to the ticketed premiere and the lack of hard evidence. Legal experts noted that with no formal charges, no witnesses, and the main victim deceased, the case was unlikely to go anywhere legally. But emotionally and socially, the impact was huge. Sheen's team responded immediately. His representatives denied all allegations, calling the story a lie. Sheen himself said the claims were false and damaging. His legal team threatened action against Feldman for defamation. They insisted that no such event ever took place and that Haim had never accused Sheen directly during his lifetime. Despite the controversy, Feldman stood by his story. He said the goal of my truth was never revenge. It was justice, healing, and awareness. Whether or not everyone agreed with his methods, it was clear that his message had reached a wide audience. Hollywood's uneasy response. After Corey Feldman released his documentary, Hollywood's reaction was mixed and, in many ways, quiet. Some actors and producers, especially those who had known Feldman and Haim during the 1980s, came forward to express their support. They praised Feldman for speaking up and said it was important to protect young actors from abuse. A few even shared their own concerns about how children were treated in the industry, confirming that the environment back then was often unsafe. However, there were also people in the entertainment world who criticized Feldman. Some felt that he was using Haim's name and story to get attention or make money. They pointed out that the documentary had a paid online premiere and limited availability, which led to claims that Feldman was turning tragedy into a business opportunity. Others accused him of waiting too long to name names or said the lack of hard proof made the allegations irresponsible. Even more noticeable was the silence from the larger Hollywood studios, networks, and major industry figures. Very few made official statements. There were no wide calls for investigations, and no major networks offered to air Feldman's documentary. Most production companies and executives remained cautious, likely because the claims, while serious, were not backed by formal charges or legal action. Without confirmed evidence or a living victim to speak firsthand, the industry mostly chose to stay quiet and avoid getting involved. By the time Feldman's documentary was released, Charlie Sheen's career was already in a rough place. After his famous firing from 2.5 Men in 2011 due to his erratic behavior, drug use, and conflicts with the show's creators, Sheen had become known more for scandals than acting. His brief return to TV with anger management didn't restore his image in the way some had hoped. Next, we'll dig into how this story fits into a bigger pattern of abuse in Hollywood and what's finally being done to change it. Charlie Sheen's public crises and decline. For a while, Charlie Sheen was one of the biggest stars on television. From 2003 to 2011, he played Charlie Harper on the hit CBS sitcom 2.5 Men. The show was a massive success, and Sheen's role as a carefree, womanizing bachelor made him a fan favorite. At the peak of his run, Sheen was the highest-paid actor on television, earning around $1.8 million per episode. His name was everywhere, and he seemed unstoppable. But in 2011, everything changed. Sheen began acting erratically in public and during interviews. He went on several talk shows and gave bizarre, confusing, and often disturbing statements. He spoke of having tiger blood and being a warlock and insisted that he was winning while others were losing. These interviews became viral moments, turning Sheen into an internet sensation for all the wrong reasons. His behavior became more and more unpredictable. Reports of drug use, partying, and fights with producers and writers began to surface. Eventually, CBS and Warner Brothers fired him from 2.5 Men. His public image quickly fell apart. What had been seen as wild charm before was now seen as dangerous and unstable behavior. The phrase "tiger blood" became a meme, and Sheen himself became the subject of internet jokes, late-night comedy routines, and public concern. While some found his outbursts entertaining, others worried he was spiraling out of control. His downfall was no longer private. It played out in real time for the world to see. Even before the tiger blood meltdown, Charlie Sheen had a long history of legal issues and personal controversies. Over the years, multiple women came forward accusing him of domestic violence and abusive behavior. Some of these incidents led to arrests, restraining orders, and court appearances. In 1996, Sheen was charged with attacking his then-girlfriend Brittany Ashland. In 2006, his ex-wife Denise Richards filed for divorce and claimed he had been abusive, paranoid, and addicted to drugs and pornography. Later, his next wife, Brooke Muller, also accused him of violence. In 2009, Sheen was arrested in Aspen, Colorado for assaulting Muller. He pleaded guilty and spent time in rehab as part of his sentence. Sheen was also linked to the infamous Hollywood madam Heidi Fleiss. In the 1990s, he admitted to spending tens of thousands of dollars on escorts through Fleiss's operation. This connection brought more attention to his private life and further harmed his reputation. In addition to the abuse allegations, Sheen was involved in several custody battles with the mothers of his children. These were highly public and often messy, with both sides accusing each other of instability. At the same time, Sheen was still making headlines for public outbursts, partying, and risky behavior. In November 2015, Charlie Sheen made another major announcement, this time on national television. He revealed that he was HIV positive. Sheen said he had been diagnosed 4 years earlier, but had kept it a secret. He explained that he decided to go public because he was being blackmailed by people who knew his diagnosis and had threatened to expose him unless he paid them. According to Sheen, he had already paid out millions of dollars to keep the information private, but the pressure, threats, and legal risks became too much. He finally decided it was better to be honest than continue living in fear of exposure. The announcement made headlines around the world. Sheen said he was receiving treatment and had a suppressed viral load, meaning the virus was under control. He also claimed he had always informed his partners or used protection. But soon after, several lawsuits were filed by women who said he had not disclosed his status to them. These legal cases added another layer of controversy to Sheen's already troubled public life. Though some people praised him for coming forward and raising awareness about HIV, others criticized him for how he handled his diagnosis in private. There were questions about honesty, responsibility, and the safety of others. Since then, Sheen has mostly stayed out of the spotlight. He has occasionally given interviews or appeared at events, often claiming that he is sober and trying to turn his life around. But the damage to his public image has been long-lasting. His past behavior, legal problems, and the abuse allegations have made it difficult for him to return to the success he once had. He is no longer the star of a hit show or a top name in Hollywood. Instead, his name now brings up a complicated mix of fame, controversy, and personal crisis. If you want more inside scoops like this, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss an update.